desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society. We are committed to supporting our community by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. As an ethically based asset manager, we are focused on delivering superior risk-adjusted returns for our clients, regardless of market conditions. Visit us at www.sentio-capital.com for more information on our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital Management. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
#That's my point with Ashraf Garda.
Well, certainly your point matters, and feel free to connect with me anytime, right? Raising some of the issues. So what do you make of the public transport issue? What do you make of, did you guys see the story about Medina, where if you want to visit the Roda, which is basically the area where you can send your salam or the salawat to the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the moment, because of the crowd regulations, in fact, you have to book it via an app. It's fascinating. So you have to literally create an appointment to be able to do so. And if you don't, then there's a chance that you may not be able to pay your respects and send that salawat in person. Well, any thoughts that you may have on that? I want to know. So just call in now, 010-880-2396. Also, if you are frequenting the mosques now, I've seen some changes. So let's take the Houghton Mosque that I go to, West Street in Johannesburg. For a good, year one of COVID, mosques were closed, as we know. Last year, massive social distancing. This year, people, 20% wear masks. It's not compulsory, I think, right? Although it's indoors, and you can debate that. And people are standing, if not tightly shoulder to shoulder, they're as close as you've ever been, that I've seen in a long, long time. And then musallas, which were compulsory before, if you want to go to the mosque, bring your own musalla, you don't have to do that. Now, I was in Cape Town last week. All those other things still apply. Cape Town, you walk into a mosque without a musalla, they give you a musalla. You stand too close to someone, they shift you sideways. It's just interesting. But this is Ramadan, and things have changed. Any thoughts that you may have on those changes that you now see in the mosques, particularly around the Taraweeh and the other prayers? As we know, people attend and frequent the mosques in higher numbers in Ramadan than at any other time of the year. Well, talking about numbers, we're going to do a regular feature this Ramadan with a company called Sentio Capital Management. You need to know your numbers and capital and how it grows. So regular feature will come up, I think every Monday, in fact. But let's find out more about the company, for starters, with Imtiaz Suliman, who's the director and portfolio manager at Sentio Capital Management. Imtiaz, appreciate your time. Good morning and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you. It seems like an Imtiaz Suliman appears to be everywhere, from Dr. Imtiaz Suliman at Gift to the Givers, then yourself, of course, and then the other Suliman, who's not quite Imtiaz, who gives us the COVID numbers. So something that connects between all of you, connecting the dots, is something you fully understand, right? So let's connect the dots about Sentio. Who is Sentio? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so Sentio Capital is an asset-based manager. Basically, what we do is we invest money on people's behalf. And the way we do that, is we follow a very integrated process between fundamental analysis, quantitative techniques, but also being very cognizant of the ethical side of investing. And what that really means is, as a manager of two Sharia-based funds, we have to take into account those Sharia-compliant aspects of investing into our investment philosophy. And this has always been the hallmark of Sentio since its inception. It was started in 2007 by...
I'll ask you about the starter in a moment. Just we'll get to that in a second. I'm interested about, your point about Sharia-based products that you have, right? So give me a practical example when a client approaches you and wants to invest their money and wants you to do it on their behalf, and you've got to make some ethical calls. I mean, what's the process of the interview that takes place? I would think it has to, and then when you finally decide on their behalf to place their money.
Yeah. So basically, what we do is we invest, on behalf of clients. But basically, the way clients come to Sentio is via their broker, or they could come directly after doing their own research. So as an asset manager, we don't provide advice in terms of investment advice, but we provide products to meet investors' objectives. And there's a whole process that goes through in terms of what we can and what we can't invest from a Sharia perspective. It's very important to have a independent Sharia board that oversees the whole Sharia compliancy of the investment process. And we can get into some of the aspects of what makes a company Sharia compliant versus a company that's not Sharia compliant.
Perhaps while we're at it, just tell us.
Yeah, so if you look at it from an overall perspective, basically Sharia or Sharia law is investing in terms of the teachings of the Quran and the Hadith and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and these two aspects forms the basis of Sharia law and Sharia investing. From an investment perspective, you want to avoid industries that are explicitly prohibited in Islam, such as gambling, pork, alcohol, defense-related companies. And basically, if you think about this, these are companies that do harms to society. So, if you take it back all the way towards first principles, in Islam, it's always about doing no harm, whether it's to the environment, whether it's to society, or whether it's to one's own self. And that forms the basis of Sharia investing.
Okay, and therefore, just a quick overview of the type of products that you offer.
So we've got two Sharia funds that we have on offer. The one is a Sharia equity fund, and the other is a Sharia balance fund. And the difference between the two is really that the Sharia equity fund has a higher allocation towards shares in particular. And over time, that should give you a higher growth rate and a higher return, but it also comes with higher volatility. From a balance fund perspective, it has a lower allocation to shares, higher allocation towards sukuks or Islamic term deposits and property. And basically, it's also Regulation 28 compliant. And what does that mean? Regulation 28 compliant is suitable for someone who wants to invest their pension fund or their retirement fund. There's certain limits in terms of different asset classes that an investor is allowed to invest in. And the Sharia balance fund caters for those different limits, such as, equity can't be more than 65% or 75% in a Regulation 28 environment. And the Sharia balance fund caters for that. So those are the two funds that we have in terms of Sentio's offering in the Sharia space.
Okay. I've noticed, your tagline as a company is invest for good. And your thoughts on, invest for good, does it often mean invest for good as in good and higher returns, or is the good as in ethical good, does it also compromise returns for an investor?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, there's a lot of research that has been done around whether if you are excluding certain aspects of the market, such as Sharia investing, you're not allowed to invest in those sectors that I mentioned, so alcohol, gambling, financial services, because of the interest component. But if you look at it over the long term, research has shown that Sharia investors haven't been compromised over a conventional investor. And a great example is the 2008 global financial crisis. What really caused that crisis was an excess of debt in the system. And you had the housing bubble in the US, you had a collapse in world markets, and it took a long time for markets and countries to come out of that crisis. And at the fundamental core of the issue around that crisis was too much debt in the system. And if you look at Sharia investing, it limits the amount of debt that a company can have before it deems it Sharia compliant. So, Sharia investors haven't done badly. They've actually outperformed a conventional fund. If you look at our fund, we benchmark ourselves against the total universe of funds out there. So this includes Sharia funds as well as non-Sharia funds. And it's beaten its benchmark over 3 years comfortably.
Okay, great. Lots to talk about, lots to learn from that. I always love the fascinating story about the how-to, as in the how-to a company started. So we're going to talk about how did a mosque, the 23rd Street Mosque in Fitas, start. But I'm very interested in Sentio. Tell me, how did it all start?
So Sentio was born on the eve of the global financial crisis in 2007. It was really founded by Mohammed Mayet and Rayan Jusuf. They came from well-known houses in the industry, and they teamed up to form Sentio Capital. The idea really was to create an asset manager that brings two different forms of investing. So you have fundamental analysis, whereby investor goes and looks at company financial statements, analyzes the prospects of the company, and comes up with a value of the company. And then you have the quantitative side of investing, whereby you look at different metrics and different ways to construct a portfolio. So, for example, how much of Anglo-American should you have in the portfolio? How much of MTN should you have in the portfolio, etc. And by doing this scientifically and doing this quantitatively, you've got a very robust investment process whereby you have the fundamental process, you've got the quantitative process coming together. And at that time, really, it was something that wasn't well known in the industry, whereby a lot of managers are now integrating these two disciplines. So that was really the idea behind starting Sentio and the time that Sentio started. Since then, the company has grown. The two co-founders are still very much involved in the day-to-day running of the company. And we're now a team of 20 people running as part of the Sentio family.
Okay, fascinating. So there you are. I'm certainly looking forward to further chats around Sentio to talk about turning your cents into rands. I think that makes sense to me. Now, you mentioned the fact that often it's the brokers that actually directs people who wish to invest to people like yourself. But however, people need to know more directly. Give me some, contact a website address perhaps they can reach out to.
Yeah, if investors want to come into Sentio, they can have a look at our website, which is www.sentio-capital.com, and you'll see the range of funds that are offered on there. And we're also on a number of investment platforms such as Easy Equities and some of the other investment unit trust providers out there, such as Momentum, Glacier, etc. So if anyone wants more info, the contact details are there. There's a number to contact as well if they want to speak to someone, and please feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, perfect. And I see that, of course, Sentio Capital as well on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram as well. So I'm going to follow you just as a starting point, and we'll see what happens. Imtiaz Suliman, thank you for your time. Imtiaz is the director and portfolio manager at Sentio Capital Management, and we look forward to further chats, I think every Monday, in fact, during this month of Ramadan.